Okay, let's talk about a single performance that literally changed music forever. We're diving into a story about a moment so radical, so divisive, that it's kind of become a modern myth. So, the big question is this. How did one guy with an electric guitar manage to split a generation right down the middle? This is all about what happened on July 25th, 1965. It's the day Bob Dylan, who was basically the crown prince of folk music, walked onto the stage at the Newport Folk Festival, plugged in, and just shattered all the rules.
Now, to really get why this was such a massive shock to the system, you have to understand the world he was rebelling against. See, the 1960s folk revival, it wasn't just a style of music. It was a full-blown movement with this really rigid, almost religious set of beliefs.
Yeah, you can think of the Newport Festival as the high church of this whole movement. It was led by these purists, people like Pete Seeger, and in their world, Bob Dylan was the undisputed prophet. He was the voice of a generation, fighting for civil rights and for social justice.
And this movement had these unwritten laws, these core tenets you just didn't break. First up, authenticity. Your music had to be real, completely untainted by corporate greed. Second was acoustic purity. An electric guitar? That was seen as this soulless, commercial, noisy machine. And maybe most important of all, your music had to have social utility. It had to serve a purpose. It had to be for the cause.
But here's the thing. While the entire folk world was busy looking to the past for inspiration, this brand new electric sound was taking over America. You had the Beatles, the whole British invasion had landed, and Bob Dylan, well, he was listening very, very closely. This quote just perfectly captures the tension that was building. The folk movement really felt like they owned Bob Dylan, that he was their voice. But that covenant, as it says here, it wasn't just going to bend. It was about to be broken in the most spectacular way you can imagine.
You see, the explosion didn't actually start the moment Dylan plugged in his guitar. The real battle lines were being drawn backstage in the 2 days leading up to his big set.
I mean, it kicked off with a literal fistfight between the old guard and the new, after Dylan's manager stood up for an electric blues band. And the tension just ratcheted up from there. That same night, Dylan held this secret, super loud rehearsal. The stage wasn't being set for a concert. It was being set for a confrontation.
And this is how people describe the noise that was coming out of that secret rehearsal. A thin, wild mercury sound. It wasn't the gentle strumming of a protest singer. No way. It was loud, it was abrasive, and it was completely alien to everything the Newport Festival was supposed to stand for.
Okay, so let's get to the performance itself and see how all this tension finally boiled over into one of the most infamous moments in music history. It's Sunday night, and Dylan, the headliner, finally walks out.
And in just 3 songs, he basically sets his old identity on fire. He opens with Maggie's Farm, which was this snarling declaration that he was nobody's servant anymore. Then comes Like a Rolling Stone, this 6-minute epic of snarling poetry that was totally unheard of at the time. And by the 3rd song, the crowd was in an absolute uproar.
Now, this famous quote perfectly captures the reaction from the patriarch of folk himself, Pete Seeger. The legend says he hated the music so much he wanted to destroy it. But the truth is actually a little more nuanced. He was furious that the loud, distorted sound was completely drowning out the lyrics. For him, Dylan was sacrificing the sacred message for just noise.
So after just 15 minutes, this chorus of boos literally drives Dylan off the stage. He was visibly shaken, but the organizers begged him to go back out, alone. So he grabs an acoustic guitar and sings It's All Over Now, Baby Blue, which was, for all intents and purposes, a funeral song for the very movement that had crowned him their king.
And that really is the central question of this whole thing, right? Was it really just about an electric guitar, or was there something much, much deeper going on with that audience?
Well, historians argue it was kind of a perfect storm. For one, there was a real technical failure. The sound mix was genuinely awful, so you couldn't hear the words. Then, fans felt cheated by the sheer brevity of the set. 15 minutes from your headliner. But the real issues went deeper. A profound sense of betrayal of identity, this feeling that their prophet had sold out, and this underlying cultural friction between the old purists and a new generation ready for something else. But here's the kicker. The fight didn't end that night. Newport was really just the first shot fired in a cultural war that Dylan then decided to take on a world tour. This hostility followed him everywhere, and it all came to a head a year later in Manchester, England. A fan famously screamed "Judas" at him, accusing him of the ultimate betrayal. But Dylan, he didn't back down. He just sneered right back, turned to his band, and famously ordered them to play it fucking loud. Newport, you see, had given him armor.
So what's the long-term result of all this chaos? Well, for starters, Dylan elevated rock and roll itself. By fusing the lyrical genius of folk poetry with the raw electric power of rock music, he forced the entire world to finally start taking rock seriously as a true art form.
He also basically created a whole new archetype for an artist. This moment shifted the job of the artist away from serving a political movement to serving their own individual vision. It's really the birth of the modern singer-songwriter as we know it today.
And finally, it just completely shattered the walls between musical genres. By mashing up folk, blues, and rock, Dylan opened the floodgates for countless new hybrid styles, starting with the immediate explosion of what became known as folk rock.
And if you need any more proof of the lasting power of that one single moment, get this. Almost 50 years later, the Fender Stratocaster he played that night, the weapon that literally started the war, sold at auction for nearly $1 million.
Ultimately, Dylan's rebellion at Newport leaves us with this huge, timeless question. It was a really painful, chaotic moment for a lot of people, but maybe it was also a necessary one. He proved that sometimes, for art to really move forward, an artist has to be willing to burn down everything their audience thinks it loves.